The illusion of choice in politics, a Machiavellian perspective. In the realm of political discourse, one of the most persistent illusions is that of choice. The belief that the electorate wields power by selecting their leaders through a democratic process. However, a Machiavellian examination exposes this notion as a carefully constructed mirage. Political candidates, much like consumer products, often emerge from the same manufacturers, designed to present the semblance of diversity while ultimately advancing a singular agenda. The essence of this strategy is to maintain the appearance of competition, thereby obscuring the reality of a controlled environment where true choice is but an illusion. Niccolò Machiavelli, in his seminal work The Prince, emphasizes that the appearance of virtue is more important than virtue itself for those seeking to maintain power. By this logic, political systems, especially in democracies, are orchestrated to offer an image of diversity and independence among candidates. Yet, behind the scenes, they often serve the same elite interests. Just as brands compete on the surface while belonging to the same parent corporation, political candidates may differ in rhetoric and persona, but align on fundamental policies that protect the status quo. This tactic aligns with Machiavelli's assertion that power is best preserved through deception and manipulation, rather than brute force alone. Historical examples of the illusion of choice. The United States provides a poignant example of this dynamic. Despite being a democracy with two dominant parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, key policy areas often show minimal divergence. For example, U.S. foreign policy has remained largely consistent regardless of which party is in power. Both parties have maintained a commitment to military interventionism and the expansion of American influence abroad. From the Vietnam War, pursued by both Democratic President Lyndon B. Johnson and his Republican successor Richard Nixon, to the more recent Iraq War, which saw bipartisan support under Republican President George W. Bush and continued military presence under Democratic President Barack Obama, the core policy direction remains largely unchanged. The candidates may differ in rhetoric or strategy, but the overarching aim of maintaining global hegemony persists, reflecting Machiavelli's idea that power is often maintained through the illusion of choice and competition rather than substantial difference. Another clear example comes from the United Kingdom in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. While the Labour Party and the Conservative Party present themselves as ideological opposites, key neoliberal economic policies have remained strikingly similar since the 1980s. Under Margaret Thatcher's Conservative leadership, the UK saw a significant privatization of state-owned industries, deregulation, and a reduction in the power of trade unions. When Tony Blair's Labour Party came to power in 1997, it was expected to reverse these policies, but Blair instead embraced a version of third-way politics, maintaining many of Thatcher's economic reforms. The continuation of these policies under different banners demonstrates how the facade of competition between parties masks a deeper alignment on crucial economic strategies. A perfect example of Machiavelli's principle that power is secured not by genuine division, but by the controlled presentation of choice. The illusion of choice as a tool of control. The illusion of choice is a strategic move that serves multiple purposes. First, it pacifies the populace by giving them a sense of agency. Machiavelli understood that people are more easily governed when they believe they have a hand in their fate. By presenting a variety of political products, the ruling elites create a sense of empowerment among voters. This is similar to the way consumers feel empowered when choosing between different brands, despite the fact that their options are limited to a narrow range controlled by the same corporate interests. In both cases, the real power dynamics remain hidden behind a veil of apparent choice. Consider the example of the Russian Federation under Vladimir Putin. Despite the presence of multiple political parties and candidates, elections are tightly controlled to ensure outcomes favorable to the ruling elite. Opposition candidates often face restrictions, legal challenges, or even outright exclusion from the ballot. In the 2018 presidential election, Putin won with over 76% of the vote, but most credible opposition figures were either barred from running or marginalized. The illusion of a democratic process was maintained, but the reality was a tightly managed system designed to preserve the existing power structure, demonstrating a Machiavellian mastery of control through perceived choice. Furthermore, the appearance of competition prevents unrest and rebellion. Machiavelli would argue that an overt monopoly of power, without the facade of competition, breeds dissatisfaction and potential revolt among the masses. By allowing the people to believe they are participating in a competitive process, the ruling class effectively channels dissent into harmless electoral participation rather than into radical or revolutionary actions. This controlled outlet of frustration is crucial for maintaining stability while safeguarding the interests of those in power. It creates a perpetual cycle where change is constantly promised but seldom delivered in any substantial way, preventing real alternatives from gaining power. From a Machiavellian perspective, the manipulation of choice is not merely a tool for governance, but a necessary strategy for survival. Power, according to Machiavelli, is best maintained when rulers are not seen to govern by coercion alone, but also through the consent, however manufactured, of the governed. The notion that political candidates belong to the same manufacturer reflects a deep understanding of this principle. By crafting a political theater in which candidates appear to oppose each other fiercely, the ruling elite disguises the reality that the fundamental power structure remains untouched. The key is to maintain the illusion of dissent, thereby co-opting the people's desire for change without ever threatening the underlying status quo. In the early 20th century, Mexico's Institutional Revolutionary Party, PRI, perfected this strategy, maintaining nearly uninterrupted control over the country for 71 years, from 1929 to 2000. Although Mexico held regular elections during this period, the PRI manipulated electoral laws, controlled media narratives, and engaged in vote buying and ballot stuffing to ensure its dominance. Opposing parties were allowed to exist and even win minor victories, but the major outcomes were carefully controlled. The semblance of democracy was preserved to maintain legitimacy, yet the actual political landscape remained firmly in the grip of the PRI, a scenario straight out of Machiavelli's playbook for maintaining power by shaping the perception of choice. Conclusion. Ultimately, the facade of choice in democratic elections serves to perpetuate a power dynamic that remains unchanged despite the apparent flux of leaders and policies. To the Machiavellian observer, this strategy is a testament to the understanding that power is not simply about force, but also about perception. By offering the people the illusion of choice, the ruling class shields itself from accountability, ensures compliance, and preserves its authority. If you believe that people are truly choosing their candidates, it is time to think again. The reality is more akin to a marketplace where the same manufacturer sells different brands of the same product, each designed to appeal to different segments of the populace while ultimately serving the same interests. The illusion of choice is a masterstroke of political manipulation, a tool that not only prevents the emergence of genuine alternatives, but also ensures that power remains in the hands of those who understand the true nature of governance. As Machiavelli so incisively described, it is not about what is true, but what appears to be true.